What if fear no longer had a voice? Not after tomorrow, not after years of struggle, but by the time this very speech ends. What if every whisper of doubt, every quiet hesitation, every invisible chain that ever held you back was broken, not managed, not negotiated with, but removed? You were not born with fear. It was taught to you, trained into you, installed by men who had long since surrendered their own power. And what can be installed can be uninstalled before anything else. Know this: fear is not a force of nature. It is a creation of man's own mind. And what the mind creates, it can also destroy. I stand before you, not with pleasant words, nor idle philosophy, but with a spiritual challenge that, if accepted, will change the course of your entire existence. There is a silent killer among men, one so cunning, so subtle, that it ruins lives long before a man realizes it has taken root. It is not poverty, it is not failure, it is fear. Fear has kept more men broke than bad luck ever has. Fear has suffocated more potential than chains or cages ever could. Fear is not loud, it whispers, and worst of all, it disguises itself as reason, as logic, as caution. But make no mistake, it is the jailer of greatness, the assassin of dreams, the enemy of all success. Today, I will not speak to entertain. I will not soothe you with comforting advice. I will speak with the purpose of a man who has walked with Titans, men like Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Charles Schwab, Thomas Edison, and John D. Rockefeller, and seen firsthand that the only difference between the man who builds an empire and the man who dies with regret is the one who refused to let fear lead his steps. This is your spiritual declaration today. You do not flirt with courage, you marry it. You do not tame fear, you terminate it. You do not wait to feel ready. You move as if you already are. This is not a lesson, this is your rebirth. And when this hour is finished, the man who sat down to listen will not be the man who rises, because today we make fear the servant, not the master. Let us begin. Fear does not announce its presence with a roar. It tiptoes in through habit, enters through silence, and binds a man by making him believe the rope is part of his own skin. Fear, my friend, is a cunning adversary. It does not strike you like lightning. It seeps into your being like a fog until you forget what the sun feels like. It rarely names itself. It hides behind phrases such as, "I'm being careful now," "is not the time," "I need more clarity," or "what if it goes wrong?" But let me tell you plainly, those are not wise thoughts. They are enslaved thoughts. They are the sounds of a man who has forgotten that he commands his mind, and now bows to it. I have studied the most powerful men the world has known, and I assure you, none of them were free of fear. What made them mighty was not the absence of it, but the mastery of it. Let me take you back when I first sat at the knee of Andrew Carnegie. He did not speak to me of industry or steel. He spoke of thought. He told me, "The man who does not command his own mind is no better than a wild horse waiting to be broken." And I saw in him something that fear could not touch: definiteness of purpose. You see, fear has one aim: to scatter your energy, to make you pause when you should act, to make you hesitate when you should move, to make you think in circles until the opportunity is gone. It is a silent thief, and it steals more than action. It steals the identity of the man you were born to become. Consider this: fear begins as a thought, a small whispering thought, a doubt, a hesitation. But if that thought is not seized and replaced, it repeats, and what repeats becomes rhythm, and what becomes rhythm becomes identity. That is how fear conquers nations. Not through guns, not through blood, but through minds that surrender their power without a fight. And so, I must ask you, what fears have you allowed to become habits? The fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of loss, the fear of ill health, the fear of old age, the fear of death. I named these 6 ghosts in Think and Grow Rich because they haunt more men than failure ever could. But the most dangerous thing about them is that they often come disguised as intelligence, as caution, even as humility. Let me give you an example. Henry Ford was not the most educated man of his time, but he possessed one trait that made him king over men of letters and scholars alike. He did not let fear make decisions for him. When he said he would build an automobile for the common man, he was not cheered, he was mocked. They said it was impossible, that he lacked the knowledge, that it had never been done, and yet he built it. Why? Because he refused to entertain fear at all. Ford understood a law most men never discover, that fear multiplies in silence, but courage multiplies in motion. Even Edison, when faced with 10,000 failures, never once gave fear the final word. Why? Because he had already decided the ending in his mind, and he trusted the law of repetition to carry him there. He understood that the mind must be trained like a machine, that fear is merely untrained imagination running wild in the absence of purpose. And so I ask you now, what part of your life has fear taken root in? Look closely. Does it hide in your hesitation to speak with boldness? Does it whisper when you delay the dream you say you want? Does it guide your hand when you settle for a life far beneath your design? Do not excuse it. Do not explain it. Name it, face it, and then replace it. Because here is the truth. No one will tell you. Fear does not leave the man who tolerates it. It leaves the man who rejects it like poison. You do not defeat fear by hoping it goes away. You defeat it by standing taller than it. You do not escape fear by thinking your way around it. You walk straight through it and discover it was a ghost all along. Charles M. Schwab understood this. He once told me, "Mr. Hill, the world does not belong to the man who avoids mistakes. It belongs to the one who moves forward, regardless of them." That is the truth of power, that fear will always scream. But your faith must speak louder, and faith is not born from inspiration. It is born from repetition. If you repeat fear, you live in fear. If you repeat power, you begin to radiate it until fear no longer recognizes you. So let me leave you with a challenge from this day forward. You will write down every fear that has paralyzed you. You will no longer let it hide behind excuses. You will call it what it is, a lie, and then each morning you will speak its opposite with conviction. I am not afraid of failure, because I am a man of execution. I do not fear criticism, because I am loyal to my vision, not to applause. I do not fear poverty, because I know that riches begin in thought and multiply in action. I do not flinch before uncertainty, because I am the author of certainty. You say it until your soul believes it. You say it until fear no longer has a seat in your thoughts, because the man who removes fear is not the man who was never afraid. He is the man who stood taller than his own mind, and that, my friend, is where mastery begins. The subconscious mind does not reason, it does not judge, it does not argue, it accepts and acts upon whatever is repeated with belief. And therein lies both your prison and your liberation. Let us now move from the battlefield of fear to the command center of the mind. For if fear is the enemy, then the subconscious mind is the battlefield, and auto-suggestion is your most powerful weapon. You may not see it with your eyes, but it governs every step you take, every word you speak, every result you attract. The subconscious does not sleep. It does not question it, simply receives and reflects what it is given through repetition. through emotion and through belief. This is no mystical claim, it is a law, a universal principle, as real and rigid as gravity itself. Allow me to be direct. If you have lived in fear, in lack, in hesitation, it is not your fault, it is your programming. And if that programming has been written by others, by your environment, your past, your pain, or the frightened voices of small minds, then of course you have hesitated, of course you have doubted, of course fear has held the reins. But here is the revolutionary truth. You can reprogram the entire system. Let me tell you how. Let us take a lesson from Henry Ford. This man repeated to himself and to others without apology. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right now. What is that? But auto-suggestion. And he did not say it once, he lived it. He built empires from it. He faced ridicule with it in his mind. And eventually the world bowed, not to his strength, but to his belief. Why? Because belief is contagious. But first it must be installed. Now understand this. Auto-suggestion is the act of deliberately feeding the subconscious mind the beliefs you want it to operate from. You do this through repetition, through emotionalized statements of identity, purpose, and faith, and you do it until the old beliefs have no oxygen left to survive. You do not beg the subconscious to change, you command it. You do not wish for better thoughts, you install them with force, with rhythm, with precision. Let me ask you, what words do you say to yourself? When no one is watching, that is your reality. Do you say, "I'm not ready"? Then your subconscious responds, "Understood." You are not ready. Do you say, "I'm afraid"? I'll fail. Then your subconscious says, "Understood." Let us avoid risk. Do you say, "What if this goes wrong"? Then your subconscious prepares you to fail and ensures you'll miss what could go right. You must speak with new language. Now you must say, "I am fearless, I execute boldly, I lead my thoughts, they do not lead me, I am the architect of my belief." You speak these truths daily, you write them in ink, you declare them out loud, not once, not twice, but until they form a groove so deep in your subconscious, there is no longer room for fear to settle in. That is how I reshaped my life. That is how every man I studied, Edison, Carnegie, Lincoln, Schwab, Ford, reshaped theirs. Do you think Edison created the light bulb with positive thinking number? He created it by programming his belief so deeply that 10,000 failures could not touch it. Each failed experiment was not a signal to quit, it was a signal to continue. Why? Because the dominant thought in his mind was the result is inevitable. I only need to persist. And how did he hold that thought? By repeating it, by visualizing it, by training his subconscious to see it as already done. You must do the same. Let me teach you the method, simple but rarely followed, with the discipline required each morning upon waking. Before the world claims your focus, you must speak aloud your chief aim, your belief, identity, and your fearless command. You must repeat with conviction. I am focused, I am powerful, I act without hesitation, my decisions are final, my mission is clear, my identity is certain. I do not wait for the world to confirm me, I confirm myself. Then at night, just before sleep, when the mind softens and the subconscious is most vulnerable, you speak them again and again and again, not until you are tired, but until you are changed. This practice is not optional, it is not for the weak, it is for the man who desires to become unrecognizable, to rise from the ashes of fear and shape his life like clay in his own hands. The man who masters autosuggestion can remove fear so completely from his system that hesitation becomes unnatural. His mind no longer seeks escape, it seeks execution. His body no longer responds to doubt, it responds to command. His words no longer reflect confusion, they reflect certainty. This is the key, my friend. If you want to become fearless, you must first train your internal voice to speak as if you already are. And the subconscious, faithful servant that it is, will obey it, always does. It always has. What are you feeding it? Faith is the foundation of all power. And I do not mean faith in religion or fate, though those may comfort. A man, I speak of practical faith, the kind that is built like a bridge between your thought and your result. Faith, in this sense, is not mystical, it is structural. It is the belief in unseen forces, not because you are naive, but because you understand how the mind works. When a man believes in his mission with such intensity that no setback can turn him, that man becomes dangerous to fear itself. Now understand this: faith is not a gift. It is not handed to a man at birth. It is not reserved for the lucky, the strong, or the privileged. No, faith is a discipline. It is built brick by brick. You lay its foundation by deciding who you are, why you are here, and what you will build before your time is up. And then you reinforce that foundation with repetition, with action, and with purpose that does not flinch under pressure. Let me show you what I mean through the life of Andrew Carnegie, the man who became the wealthiest industrialist in American history. He did not start with money. He did not inherit an empire. He started in a telegraph office, barely more than a boy, but what he possessed even then was an unshakable sense of purpose. Carnegie knew that his rise would not be immediate, but he believed beyond logic that every small opportunity, every day of effort was preparing him for the moment when his definite purpose would meet massive opportunity. And when that opportunity came, he did not hesitate. He was ready. His faith had already built the roads. This is the power of definiteness, of purpose. When you choose a target and burn every other bridge, the universe itself begins to organize. Around you, doubt dies. In the presence of focus and fear cannot live inside a man who knows why he is alive. Most men drift. They change their aim with the seasons. One week they desire freedom, the next comfort, the next applause. But the man of purpose, he does not drift. He is fixed like a compass, unmoved by the winds. He wakes each day not to react, but to execute. Now look at Abraham Lincoln. His presidency was forged in the fires of division, the country torn in two, allies, wavering enemies rising. And yet, Lincoln held to his mission. His purpose was union. His faith was in liberty. He did not know how long the war would last. He did not know how deep the cost would cut. But he decided early that the end result was non-negotiable. The United States would not fall, slavery would not survive, and he walked in that belief daily, even when the odds whispered otherwise. That is what purpose does. It strengthens a man's back in the storm. It lends him the ability to stand when others kneel, to speak when others grow silent, to act when others wait for permission. And make no mistake, you must now decide your purpose. Not a list of goals, not a dream, not a fantasy scribbled in excitement, but a single sentence written in fire that becomes the axis of your existence. What will you build? Who will you become? What outcome will you refuse to leave undone? Write it, speak it, memorize it. Make it the last thing you say before sleep, and the first thing you speak into the silence of dawn. That is how Charles M. Schwab rose through the ranks of Carnegie's empire. He was not the most brilliant technician, but he was the most decisive, the most purpose-driven. While others flinched and waited, Schwab acted. He did not dabble. He did not shrink. He gave more than was asked. He led teams not through command, but through certainty. And that certainty came from faith in the mission, a faith that infected every man who worked under him. You must build that same energy. You must carry your belief, not in whispers, but in movement. You must show up when no one applauds. Persist when no one sees. Build when the scoreboard says you are losing, because faith is not built by ease. It is forged in resistance. It is made real, not by comfort, but by continued execution when fear hisses in your ear. And here's the final truth of this section. You cannot fake faith. You cannot perform your way to belief. You must earn it through decisions made in silence, through rituals that demand excellence, through speech that reflects clarity, even when the path is clouded. Do this, and fear becomes irrelevant. It may knock, but you will not answer. You will be too busy executing. Understand, this indecision is the fertile soil in which fear grows. Every hesitation you allow, every question you leave unanswered, every quiet maybe you whisper to yourself, is a crack through which doubt creeps in. Fear does not begin with failure. It begins with the refusal to choose. A man who cannot decide is a man who cannot rise. He is a ship without a rudder, at the mercy of every current, every opinion, every shift in the wind. His energy is scattered, his will is diluted. He waits, and while he waits, his future is stolen from him, one day at a time. But the man who decides firmly finally becomes something altogether different. Let me tell you about Henry Ford. When he set out to build a motorwork car for the common man, he was met with laughter. His own engineers called his vision impossible. The idea of an 8-cylinder engine in a single block cannot be done, they said. And what did Ford say? Produce it anyway. Not once, not twice, but every time they returned with failure, he sent them back with the same command: produce it anyway. That is not optimism. That is not blind belief. That is the power of decision. A decision so firm that it bends reality to match it. And that engine was built, not by chance, but by command. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you decided with that kind of finality? Most men do not. They dance around commitment. They try, but do not burn the bridge. They entertain their goal while secretly keeping a door open to escape. And as long as that door exists, fear has a place to live. You must understand, this decisiveness is not about being correct all the time. It is about being committed. A decision made with full belief will take you farther than 1,000 clever hesitations. Why? Because the universe favors motion, and indecision delays that motion. Let me speak plainly. The most successful men I studied, Ford, Edison, Carnegie, Schwab, they all shared this in common. When they made up their mind, they moved, and when they moved, they did not look back. Thomas Edison attempted over 10,000 times to invent the electric light, 10,000 decisions to try again, 10,000 deliberate acts of movement in the face of uncertainty. Each decision was not small, each one was a wound inflicted on doubt. Edison did not ask the public if it could be done. He decided, and then he acted, until the world had no choice but to believe what he had already accepted. Decision is an act of creation. It creates clarity. It creates clarity. It creates identity. And here is the spiritual law behind it. A man who decides who he is and lives according to that decision. But it cannot, but it cannot, it cannot, but it cannot, but it can, but it can, to be by, to what I it obeying to how with, by, I, how, with the bird, you have to where good have tip to the you are the got the will die with the duck where would be they do how you to part if I gave it to we would the idle tide with the bed and debating endlessly, but by making decisions swiftly and standing behind them. Carnegie trusted Schwab, not because he was the most technical, but because he moved while others talked. Schwab acted while others planned. Schwab produced. So I ask you, what decision have you left undecided? What truth have you postponed? What version of yourself have you refused to fully claim? Because indecision is not harmless. It is the slow death of destiny, and fear uses it like a scalpel, cutting away your potential, one hesitation at a time. Say this with me now aloud. Wherever you are, I decide quickly. I move without apology. I do not retreat. My word is final, because I trust the man who speaks it. Let these words carve themselves into your mind. Say them often, because each time you repeat that identity, you replace the version of yourself that waited with the one who leads. Let me be even more direct. Every time you hesitate, you teach your subconscious to question you. Every time you delay, you whisper to your mind, my will is not trustworthy. But every time you decide and act, you train your subconscious to say, this man means what he says. And that training is how self-command is built. So from this moment forward, you are no longer a man who waits. You are a man who chooses, even when it's unclear, even when it's uncertain, even when the crowd wavers. You choose because you are the architect of your life. And the builder does not ask the bricks for permission. He lays them anyway. The man who would become fearless must first understand this fear is not an event, it is a habit. It is not something that simply appears when the conditions are wrong. It is a pattern born of repetition, installed through years of unchallenged thought. And as with any habit, it can be rewired if you are willing to apply greater repetition in the direction of strength. Let us examine what repetition truly means, not the mindless repeating of tasks, but the deliberate imprinting of a new identity through the daily disciplined use of thought. This was the cornerstone of my teaching, and I called it by many names: auto-suggestion, definitus of purpose, and most importantly, thought control. But let us not speak in abstractions. Let me show you how this operated in the minds of the greatest men I ever studied. Andrew Carnegie, the man whose wisdom laid the foundation for all of my life's work, did not rise from a family of wealth. He was born into struggle, into silence, into what the world would call disadvantage. But undegating would say, and I'm doing a man would is a worthing a band. When I'm nodding a fortune of it doing a band. And then I am bounding a band, you would be and you had to say in, to be in bed, to its end, and it pudding, pipo, and yan, but and ben, and we and when the bird and all were the decide what I suck to you do not speak and that do not do what do your you conscience to and there I but to give book show out what to be you had what you will what a guy go with what I would tell you you do without you would if I would do that would do you I will you know you could always you just you but with a few if I will you longer recognizes fear as an option now. Consider Thomas Edison. He once said, I never failed once. I merely found 10,000 ways that won't work. That was not merely a clever statement, that was a ritual of thought. Edison did not entertain failure because he had rehearsed success so frequently in his mind that failure could find no foothold. He awoke each day, regardless of yesterday's results, and stepped into his laboratory with the certainty that something was forming, even if the rest of the world could not yet see it. That is the habit of thought. I am asking you to install a belief so deeply etched into your identity that fear cannot live in your system, not because you do not feel it, but because your dominant thoughts leave no room for it. To grow, let me offer you the tool, repetition. It is the hand that chisels the mind, and not just repetition of words, but repetition until the until the owning, until it is and of till. A clear written statement of your definite aim, a vocal declaration of that aim with emotion, a moment of visualization, seeing yourself as the man who has already achieved that purpose. And finally, a silent vow. I do not flinch, I do not fold, I do not entertain fear. These 4 acts, done consistently with faith and emotion, will begin to restructure your subconscious mind. They will form new grooves in your thinking, and those grooves become your mental roads. And once the roads are paved, your thoughts begin to travel them by default. This is what happened to Henry Ford. He was not the most educated man, he was not the most eloquent, but he had a system, a mental factory, if you will, that produced certainty when asked how he would solve a problem too complex for him. He said, I do not need to know the answer. I can summon to my mind, or to my team, any expert. I require the belief that the solution exists is already enough. Do you see what that means? He had already removed fear from the equation, because in his mind, failure had no place. He did not fear the unknown. He simply assumed that clarity would arrive, and it did, again and again. And so, I ask you now, what do you rehearse each day when no one is watching, when the world is silent? What words do you whisper to yourself? If those words are filled with doubt, you are programming yourself to fail. If those words are soaked in fear, you are building an identity of hesitation. And if those words are careless, scattered, or reactive, then your life will be the same. So I instruct you now, take command of the words, create a script that is worthy of the man you wish to become, and speak it loudly, daily, repeatedly, and say, I am calm in uncertainty, I am steady in pressure, I am decisive in doubt, I do not fear the outcome, I shape it. Let those lines become your armor, and if they feel strange at first, good. That is the sign that you are installing a new identity. Speak them again. Speak them until they become natural. Speak them until they become you. Remember, your current fear is not the result of this moment. It is the result of every moment that came before, every thought you did not challenge, every belief you accepted without testing it. But today, that changes. From this day forward, you will speak like a man who does not negotiate with fear. You will walk like a man who commands his own mind. You will repeat power until power becomes your rhythm, and the old fear, it will have no choice but to die. From starvation, let us now continue to the next part and explore what happens when your entire life is built on this new internal system. Shall we? Once a man has begun the process of reprogramming his mind through repetition, he must take the next step, perhaps even more critical, and that is to guard the environment of his thoughts. Let me state this plainly. No thought is safe if your environment is unguarded. Fear, like a thief in the night, enters silently, and more often than not, it does not enter through your own mind. It enters through the words, doubts, and energies of others. I discovered this truth in my earliest conversations with Andrew Carnegie. He told me, if you place a weak mind in the company of stronger ones, it will either rise or it will retreat and rot. But if the stronger minds are not aligned, the result is confusion, not elevation. From that statement, I began to study not only the habits of great men, but the environments they built around themselves. Let me give you examples so that you may understand with clarity. Henry Ford once ridiculed and mocked, for his belief in the common automobile was often questioned. How did you continue when the newspapers, the financiers, even your own men began to doubt you? His answer was profound. Because I didn't invite them into my mind. Ford understood a principle you must now accept as law. The mind is sacred ground, and not every voice deserves entrance. He surrounded himself with only those who could add value to the vision. And when doubt arose, as it always does, he returned not to conversation, but to introspection, to solitude. He did not argue, he executed. Likewise, Thomas Edison, though man of collaboration, was ruthless in his selection of those who entered his circle. He tolerated no mockery of his experiments. He allowed no cynicism into the laboratories where his dreams were being born, because he knew one sarcastic remark, one poorly timed doubt, could ruin hours of focused effort. Why? Because the subconscious mind, though powerful, is also deeply impressionable. You may feed it power all morning through affirmation and repetition, but if you then walk into a room of gossip, sarcasm, and low ambition, you contaminate the mind's atmosphere. Let us return to Charles M. Schwab, a man who built steel empires and commanded the loyalty of entire industries. He once told me that the most important decision a man makes each day is not what he will do, but whom he will listen to. Schwab surrounded himself with clarity, not simply intelligence, not just skill, but clarity. He wanted no part in the complaints of the world. He had no interest in voices that predicted failure. If a man could not speak with belief, Schwab would not listen now. You must ask yourself, who has been allowed too much access to your subconscious? Whose voice do you hear when fear speaks? Is it your own, or the ghost of a parent who doubted you, a friend who failed and now mocks success, a teacher who whispered mediocrity into your spirit? You must become ruthless in this evaluation, not cruel but decisive. This is the mental discipline required for greatness, to filter your influences as carefully as you would protect your wealth, because truly your attention is your greatest currency. Would you leave gold coins scattered on a public street? Then why would you leave your thoughts open to anyone with an opinion? There are men who drain your belief with every sentence. There are voices that sound reasonable, but hide poison. They mock ambition. They worship comfort. They disguise fear as logic and call your vision unrealistic. These are not advisors. These are saboteurs, and they must be removed from your mental circle. Let me show you how to do this. Audit your conversations. Who lifts you? Who reinforces the new identity you're building? Who causes doubt to rise even subtly? Protect your silence before you begin your day. Spend time in complete thought control. Speak your script. Rehearse your affirmations. And let no voice enter until your mental armor is sealed. Refuse to explain your mission. The more you explain, the more you weaken your internal certainty. Speak your aims only to those who can help build them. To the rest, offer silence. Create a ritual of alignment. Each evening, return to the vision. Reconnect with your definite purpose. Review your actions. Rebuild the belief that the world tried to erode. This is not arrogance. This is self-command. Remember, Abraham Lincoln, though known for his kindness, was also a man of silence. He did not waste words. He did not defend every decision. He carried a stillness that unnerved his critics, because it came not from ego, but from clarity, from clarity, from clarity, from clarity, of clarity is now your goal, and it begins at kid. Recognition that your mind must be treated like a fortress, not a hallway. Let this be your rule. If they do not sharpen my belief, they do not get access to it now. Say this aloud. I do not allow fear into my circle. My subconscious is sacred, and I protect it with precision. My mental atmosphere is pure, powerful, and aligned. Speak these truths until they no longer feel like defenses but standards. And when you live by those standards, fear begins to suffocate, and it loses its allies. It loses its entry points. It loses the chorus of voices it once used to weaken your spine. Because now your mind is clean. Now your belief is sealed. Now your focus is forged, and your inner fortress can no longer be breached. Let us proceed to the next part, where you will learn to move into action without hesitation for the final. Enemy of fear is motion. Shall we? There is a truth as old as time, and yet as urgent as breath itself. Fear cannot exist in the presence of decisive action. While many men attempt to think their way out of fear, the builders, the producers, the titans of industry, they know the deeper law of fear cannot be reasoned with. It can only be overrun. Let me tell you what, Andrew. Carnegie once revealed to me in a private moment of startling clarity. He said, "The best way to destroy fear is to act so quickly that it has no time to speak." This, I later discovered, is the thread woven through every story of greatness I have ever written about decisive movement in the face of uncertainty. Let us take Henry Ford, for instance. When others hesitated, he built. When others debated feasibility, he constructed assembly lines. When the experts said it couldn't be done, he acted as if it had already been done. He acted as if it had already been done. Ford was not immune to fear. No man is, but he had learned a secret most men never understand. You do not wait for the disappearance of fear. You move despite it. And here's why this works. Fear feeds on inactivity. It breeds in stillness. It multiplies in delay. Every time you wait, every time you hesitate, you give fear a chance to whisper its poison. But when you move, even clumsily, even imperfectly, you cut off its oxygen. You silence its voice. You teach your subconscious this undeniable lesson. I led and fear follows. Let us pause here and reflect on the case of Thomas Edison. This was not a man of endless contemplation. He was a man of endless iteration. When asked about his thousands of failures in creating the light bulb, he didn't weep or regret. He replied, I have not failed. I've simply found I pound work. Now why would a man see failure as information? Because he never stopped moving. The moment one approach failed, he acted again. That movement, that forward thrust, it fought through the word. It is tore through its presenting in a print by and but and pre the can most sebble by to a bar to by that if die papa to have it to go to you but will to go pass at me with other I snide how do I find was I tied that if I but be I but dependent the wood the part if I was device this people who died without fear from nesting in his mind. You may wonder, how do I apply this to my own life? Let me give you a pattern. Do not wait to feel ready. Read that again. Readiness is a byproduct of movement, not a prerequisite for it. The man who waits for courage never receives it. Courage arrives in motion, not in silence. Shorten the space between idea and action when your mind offers a bold thought. To speak to, write, to build, to reach, you must act within moments. The longer you wait, the louder fear grows. Measure only your integrity to action, not the result. Did you move? Did you execute? Then you won. For every action taken is a vote against hesitation and a step toward identity. Charles M. Schwab lived by this very law. His rise in Carnegie's empire was not due to knowledge alone. It was due to speed of execution. While others debated, Schwab decided. While others planned, Schwab acted. And because of that opportunity sought him out, there is a rhythm to greatness. And that rhythm is motion. Let me give you a contrast. The average man hesitates. He imagines rejection. He visualizes defeat. He seeks perfection before beginning, and in doing so, he feeds the very fear. He wishes to kill, but the builder begins. He understands that motion creates clarity, that one step forward opens paths that standing still will never reveal. He knows that progress is not born from thought alone. It is born from the fusion of thought and deed. And this, my friend, is why so many men remain in cycles of mediocrity, because they refuse to move while afraid. Now, I must tell you this: there will be no transformation without discomfort. Fear does not leave politely. It does not retreat, regardless of internal resistance. This is the path forged by Abraham Lincoln in the darkest hours of the Civil War. When the nation split and blood spilled, he did not allow fear to freeze him. He acted, he spoke, he wrote the proclamation, not because he was confident in the result, but because the mission demanded action. And that is the standard you must now accept. Let your mission become louder than your hesitation. Let your purpose, let your identity at your pause, let your identity as a builder silence, as a builder silence every whisper of doubt. Because action is not just what you do, it is who you become. Each time you move, you teach your subconscious. I am the kind of man who acts. Each time you step forward, even when uncertain, you rewire your belief. Each time you execute, even without evidence, you cast a vote for the identity you seek. Let me leave you with this truth: you can feel afraid and still move forward, but you cannot feel fearless until you do so now. I say rise, act, move, not because it is easy, but because your future self is already waiting on the other side of motion. And when you meet him, you'll realize fear was never the obstacle. Inaction was. Now let us proceed to the master principle that governs every victory and makes permanent what action begins. Definiteness of purpose. Every man who has risen above fear, who has conquered doubt, who has looked the unknown in the eye and moved anyway, has done so because of one thing: he knew exact what he wanted. He had what he wanted. He had I Polshus of seeking with. You meanly how I is, but I mean we cerned. He is in mad, is so pre-planed of his scene. In who is so is priso prupwen by Harry was so you the killer to queer but guitar do you will do you are about to do you if I could you with Pekka you could figure what we thought or the spy you have now you might put it if what are you if you to be but past from the worst but between options, who changes direction with every gust of opinion, that man will never become fearless. Because fear loves confusion. It thrives in the life of a man without direction. It grows in the cracks of ambiguity. But the man who decides, the man who chooses a single aim and backs it with all the energy of his being, he becomes dangerous to fear. Why? Because purpose gives pain, meaning. It gives setbacks, context. It gives fear a rival more powerful than itself. Let me illustrate with one of the clearest examples. In American history, Henry Ford did not aim vaguely for success. He decided to put every man behind the wheel of a motorc car, and he let no setback, no ridicule, no technical, no tortial, no technical, no coinesal storm. When others, pre-CMS, with BCS being that is so in, and that is so in, was so you do it about it, argue, you hear bad by it, you have but you with your act, you give, could go to go, maybe you fight, laughed he built. When others hesitated, he streamlined his definiteness of purpose, burned so brightly that it lit an industry on fire. Let me tell you this, Ford did not defeat fear by force. He defeated it by replacing it with focus. Andrew Carnegie, another titan whose mind I studied more deeply than most men, believed so strongly in the power of purpose that he required every man under his leadership to declare it. He said, "Show me a man with a clear purpose, and I will show you a man whom failure cannot defeat." Carnegie believed that all weakness, all indecision, all fear came from one root, a divided mind. He selected Charles M. Schwab as the president of U.S. Steel, not merely because of his energy, but because of his clarity. Schwab was not a genius by birth, but he spoke his mission with such confidence that other men fell in line. His definiteness of purpose made him magnetic. And what of Abraham Lincoln? Do you suppose that man stood against a fractured nation, issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and led through war without fear? He knew fear, but he also knew his purpose, and it was more sacred than his safety. He was not trying to figure it out. He was not looking for options. He had made a final decision that the Union would endure and that the cause of freedom would not be silenced. That decision gave him spine. It gave him resolve, and it made him immune to the paralysis that fear brings now. I ask you, dear listener, have you decided? Have you chosen a purpose so deeply, so completely, that it anchors you in every storm? Because until you do, you will always be prey to fear. You will always be tempted to quit it. You will always need more motivation, more inspiration, more reminders. But when you decide truly, finally, something miraculous occurs. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and you start saying, "This will be done." You no longer debate your options, and because the path is fixed, you no longer fold under resistance, because the mission is not open for negotiation. I will give you a command now, and I urge you to take it seriously. Write your chief aim, not a wish, not a wish, not a wish. Cocised, claset, to ply it aloud, palagy to allow it is sell it aloud it is go it. It is so it is pow you it again one of it to up you to idea to ya everybody step where you die by you where you die by my babu you would how be all who was you I my I do we were is it though you if you the you but was boy the boy so if you will with feeling, because the subconscious mind does not follow half-deisance. It obeys only the clear and the repeated. And do not make the mistake of creating a list of aims. Choose one aim, one mission, one dominant desire to which all other actions bend. That is what makes a man formidable. That is what makes fear retreat. You cannot fear the opinions of others. When your energy is consumed by pursuit, you cannot be paralyzed by what piffs. When you have declared, "This is what will be," let me leave you with this story. When Edison was working on the light bulb, a reporter asked him after his many failures, "Mr. Edison, do you ever consider giving up?" Edison replied, "Young man, I have decided to create this light, and now I'm simply eliminating the ways that do not lead to it." That is definiteness of purpose. It is the death of doubt. It is the root of all power. It is the foundation on which the fearless man stands, while the uncertain man sinks. So I ask you again, have you decided? If not, decide now, because until you do, every step forward will be accompanied by hesitation, and hesitation is the ally of fear. But once you decide, you'll begin to move, like a man with fire in his eyes, and fear will no longer recognize your face. Shall we go even deeper now into the force that reinforces this purpose and gives it lasting life? Let us now enter the heart of the subconscious mind through the sacred. Ritual of autosuggestion. Shall we proceed? Now that you have declared your purpose, you must reinforce it until it becomes louder than every doubt, every distraction, every whisper of fear that once ruled your life, and that reinforcement comes through the master key of the mind. Autosuggestion. You may ask, Mr. Hill, what is autosuggestion? Let me answer as plainly as I can. It is the act of feeding the subconscious mind a new reality through repetition and emotion, until that reality becomes identity. You see, my friend, your subconscious does not accept truth, it accepts repetition. It does not follow logic, it follows dominance. The words you repeat, and whether aloud or in thought, whether with belief or sarcasm, they are building you line by line, day by day, word by word. That is why I must implore you, repeat this speech daily. Not once, not when convenient, not when you feel inspired, every morning, every night, until the voice you hear within is no longer the voice of fear, but the voice of conviction, because the enemy of progress is not failure, the enemy is forgetting. And what you do not repeat, you will forget. What you do not rehearse, you will not become. Let me remind you, Henry Ford did not repeat weakness. He repeated belief. He famously said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. That was not a clever saying. That was mental programming. He did not allow space for doubt. He spoke only of possibility. And because he repeated it, his mind accepted it. And because his mind accepted it, the world followed his thought. Thomas Edison did not wait for the crowd to believe in his vision. He believed first, and he spoke it into the silence, into the void, into the dark rooms of failure. And that belief, repeated 10,000 times, eventually gave the world light. Now, let me speak to you as plainly as possible. If you do not program your mind, the world will. And the world will not install strength, it will install fear, it will feed you doubt, it will teach you limits. And if you let it, if you simply drift, you will become a copy of your environment, not a master of your destiny. So what must you do? You must repeat what you intend to become. You must speak to yourself as a commander speaks to his army, with force, with clarity, with finality. Each morning, rise and declare, I am not afraid, I act without hesitation. Everything is working in my favor, and I move like it. Do not say these words like a man hoping, say them like a man deciding. Do not whisper them with apology, speak them with presence, because the subconscious mind listens not to the volume of your voice, but to the conviction in your tone. That is why Andrew Carnegie demanded that his men recite their aims aloud each day. He knew that repetition was not a gimmick, it was the method. You do not need another speech. You need this speech again and again until it becomes your voice. And do not treat this as a message for today. Treat it as a ritual for a lifetime. Burn these words into your spirit. I do not beg fear to leave. I replace it with faith. I do not delay action. I speak. I move. I become. If you begin every morning with this before the world gets its hands on you, if you end every night with this before sleep locks your thoughts in place, then the identity of power will etch itself into you. The man you were, the man who hesitated, who shrank, who doubted, he will disappear, and in his place, a man who walks in silence, but moves the world. That is not as the law is. That is the law, with the law, ka-law. That is so, is the law, with plub so, in law, al-bum, la, puava, you, iva, gana, but ta, but te, well, I, to, but you, with a quick word, but, oh, you, by the, you, you, if it with it, we, if you, with the verified that is a good if war is what if my wife with you others, but over self. So do not scroll to the next idea. Do not chase another voice. Do not water down this instruction. Repeat this speech until every bone in your body believes it, until your actions obey it, until your posture begins to reflect it. And without effort, without reminder, this is not suggestion. This is auto-suggestion. And if you will honor it, and with discipline and fire, there will come a day, and not long from now, when the man who once feared everything is no longer recognizable. Shall we press forward? Let us now deal with the next enemy that must be confronted, the opinion of others. Let us continue. There comes a time in every man's life when he must choose. Will I live by my own vision, or by the opinions of the crowd? For most, that choice is never made. They drift, they defer, they delay their destiny in favor of approval, and in so doing, they sentence their greatness to silence. Let me speak to you now with full force. The fear of other people's opinions is a thief. It robs you not only of peace, but of power. It is not harmless, it is not polite, it is poison dressed in the garments of social acceptance. You must make a firm decision. The opinion of the crowd shall never outweigh the voice of my own purpose. Too many men wait for permission. They delay their calling until their neighbor agrees with it. They shrink their voice to fit the small minds around them, and in doing so, they trade their birthright for belonging. But no man who has ever shaped the world was accepted by it first. Did Abraham Lincoln wait for applause before issuing his Emancipation Proclamation? He was mocked, condemned, hated by many, yet he moved forward not because it was popular, but because it was right. Did Thomas Edison take a poll because it was right? Did Thomas Edison take a poll before he pursued his inventions? His critics called him mad, a failure, a dreamer, but he paid no mind. Why? Because he did not look to the masses for direction. He looked within. And Henry Ford, when the world said the car was a toy, a novelty, a foolish idea, he built it anyway. He trusted his vision more than he feared their laughter. That is the kind of man you must become, a man who does not consult the crowd before taking his next step, a man who does not explain his every move to those who have built nothing, a man who does not tremble in the face of mockery, but grows sharper in it. Understand this: the crowd will never understand you. That is not their role. Their role is to observe. Your role is to build. And the moment you confuse the two, the moment you let the opinions of idle men shape your actions, you forfeit your edge. Let me tell you something few will admit: most of the people whose opinions you fear are not thinking about you at all. They are too busy wrestling their own demons, too wrapped in their own insecurities, too scattered to lead even their own lives. And yet these are the voices you allow to steer yours. That ends now. From this moment forward, you must create distance between your mission and their misunderstanding, not from hatred, but from clarity. You are not here to be understood. You are here to become undeniable. The critic does not build statues. The cynic writes no history. The gossip carves no legacy. But the man who moves in silence, who walks with conviction, who builds without begging for applause, he becomes a force. Repeat this to yourself until it becomes law. Their opinions are not my instructions. Their doubts are not my instructions. Their doubts are not my blueprint. Their approval is not only we will bill I like with it or got to I come up with a put of I to I but you to try to with you to do to buy you if you got a will but my commitment. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. And when you are aligned with purpose, the voices that once terrified you begin to sound like background noise. They lose their grip because you have found something louder the truth within. I tell you now, there is no faster way to kill fear than to stop living for the expectations of the fearful. So when they mock you, keep building. When they doubt you, stay silent. When they ask, who do you think you are? You answer with action. You are the man who leads himself. You are the man who walks forward without explanation. You are the man who has burned the bridge to external validation. Say it aloud. I do not live for their applause. I live for my purpose. I do not wait for approval. I act from decision. I do not fear the crowd. The crowd fears my clarity. Let that be your shield the next time you feel the sting of judgment. Let that be your sword the next time fear of criticism rises in your chest, because the man who fears opinion forfeits destiny. But the man who kills that fear, he walks with a presence that silences rooms without uttering a word. Let us continue. Let us now speak of a force greater than logic, greater than strength, greater than talent, a force that builds empires from dust, lifts men from obscurity, and steadies the hand of the builder when the winds of failure howl. That force is faith, not faith as the world misuses it, not blind optimism or wishful thinking. Number the faith of which I speak is earned, forged, installed through repetition, through discipline, through the daily rehearsal of belief. Long before the results arrive, faith is the weapon that slays fear, not with emotion, but with certainty. Understand this: fear cannot survive in the presence of true faith. And I say true because the kind of faith that bends under pressure is not faith at all. It is illusion. You must forge a faith so strong, so grounded, that no amount of darkness can unseat it. And how do you forge such a thing? Through repetition with emotion, by feeding the subconscious mind daily with words, commands, affirmations, until it begins to obey. Every morning you must speak your identity aloud. Every night you must rehearse the man you are becoming, and every time fear attempts to speak, you must interrupt it with certainty. Let me tell you a story. When Thomas Edison was working on the invention of the light bulb, he was asked after hundreds of failures whether he felt he had wasted his time. He answered, not with frustration, but with faith. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. He didn't call them failures. He didn't question his path, because the invention already existed in his mind, and he had faith that it would soon exist in the world. That is how you must live. You don't need to see the proof before. You act because the outcome is already real to you. Henry Ford once said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. This wasn't a clever phrase, it was a statement of universal law. A man's belief is the seed of his results. What he accepts in the depths of his mind becomes law in the material world. So what are you accepting? What are you repeating? What are you rehearsing? When no one is looking and the world is silent, because that is where faith is formed. Not in public, not in applause, but in private and in solitude, in the early hour, where your words echo against the walls and slowly sink into your being. This is not mysticism, this is psychology. This is the science of autosuggestion, which I laid down in the pages of Think and Grow Rich and witnessed in the lives of every man I ever studied. Andrew Carnegie did not become a titan of wealth by accident. He rehearsed his belief in himself. He spoke his goals aloud. He fed his subconscious with purpose until every cell in his body moved in his cell in his body, moved in unison toward it. World to believe in him, he believed first, and the world had no choice but to follow. You must do the same. Say this aloud. I believe in my purpose. Even before results appear, I feed my mind with power until it forgets weakness. I move in faith, not because I feel ready, but because I have decided it is so. This is the rhythm of a man who becomes unshakable. This is the discipline that kills fear, because repetition with feeling creates identity, and identity overrules emotion. You must install belief so deeply, so frequently, that fear has no space left to breathe. And when doubt creeps in, as it will, you do not argue with it, you do not reason, you simply return to the script. You repeat. That is the most powerful discipline a man can possess, not just to feel strong, but to repeat strength until it becomes his nature. So every morning, you wake up and you rehearse the future, not casually, not for entertainment, with fire, with conviction, with repetition that makes the ground beneath you believe it. To you say, I am fearless, I am focused, I am becoming the man who cannot be broken. And if you repeat it with enough emotion, with enough frequency, your mind will accept it. And once your mind accepts it, the world will begin to mirror it. That is the law of faith. That is how fear dies. That is how a man becomes dangerous. In silence, let us move forward now. Let us step into one of the most vital truths a man must ever learn: the link between fear drift and indecision. Understand this with every fiber of your being. Fear feeds on hesitation. It draws its power not from the external world, but from the internal confusion of a man who has not made up his mind. The longer you delay, the more room fear has to grow. But when you decide fully, finally, and without apology, fear dies instantly. Decision is the great eliminator. It clears the fog, it silences the voices. It evicts fear from the chambers of your mind, and the failure to decide that is the beginning of drift. I have said this before, and I say it again now, with more urgency. Drift is the silent destroyer of all dreams. A man may survive pain, he may endure failure, but he will be destroyed by drift, the quiet daily slide into mediocrity that begins the moment he refuses to make a firm choice. Let me all want, not trait in common. In quanon, if you are drifting, you are not free, you are not free, you are a puppet of fear, a prisoner of penitence and indist and circumstance. Now listens now, like since conestains in it pissance, it is ponitsain it is not, it is gone, not naik and it is sway but ill is it every how is it damn and within that give with it to I could but to you here to you if you could you to your amadi will be by you to you you to death though you avoid to you am I that they come and find before me for it if it's recklessness, not haste, but clear, calm, final decisions, made quickly and rarely reversed. Let me remind you of Henry Ford, when he set his sights on creating a motor torque car for the common man. He did not ask permission, he did not seek approval from the doubters nor debate. Endlessly with his peers, he made a decision, and the world adjusted his own engineers. Told him an 8-cylinder engine in a single block was impossible. Ford looked them in the eye and said, build it anyway. And they did not, because it suddenly became possible, but because his decision left no room for retreat. Charles M. Schwab, trusted by Andrew Carnegie to lead the steel empire, rose not through technical genius, but through unwavering decision in times of pressure. When others hesitated or looked to escape responsibility, Schwab stepped forward. He acted, he led, and Carnegie, his entire fortune was built upon one thing: definiteness of purpose. A purpose so clear, so fully accepted, that every action aligned with it, every decision pointed to it. There was no drift, only direction. Contrast that with the average man. He hesitates, he overthinks, he waits to feel ready, he delays decisions until circumstances are perfect, which they never are, and in the delay, fear takes root, doubt grows, momentum dies. Do not let this be you. A man cannot afford to live in. Maybe a man must choose, and the moment you choose, a force awakens within you, a force that says, this is who I am now, and there is no going back. Say that aloud. I decide quickly, I change slowly, only when the facts demand it. I act without delay. I do not drift. I move with finality. I burn the bridge. Behind me burning the bridge is not poetry, it is strategy. So long as you leave a path of retreat, fear will whisper in the dark. You can always go back. But once you decide, once you cut the rope, shut the door, and remove the exit, you unlock the power that only clarity can give. Let me share with you what I learned through years of research and conversations with the most powerful minds on earth. Fear cannot dominate a man who has made up his mind. It may knock, it may whisper, but it cannot enter because decision has locked the gates. You must live this every morning. Rehearse your identity every day. Recommit to your mission. Do not let emotion dictate your steps. Let decision dictate them. And when the feeling comes, the hesitation, the voice of the old self, the fear of failure, interrupt it. Say with certainty, I have fairity, I have sative say, I have certainty. I have say to not enter not, I'm not, I do not, I don't that, don't I am out to be in. It is so would be a do with it is so it was it then is it you it could if so to put where walk up I go by do who tub to what you up will pap with ever put trick for the dot to amuse you what you up I made a what I used to hit what if I you at you tip at they love to be to this what that fear disguised as logic, and then you move. You do the thing you said you would do without delay, because every time you follow through, every time you move without hesitation, you build a spine of steel inside yourself. You become unshakable, and soon the world will not question your certainty. It will respect it. So let me ask you, what decisions are you still avoiding? What bridges must you burn? What direction must you fully commit to without allowing drift to return? Decide now, decide deeply, and from this moment on, let your decisions move faster than your fear ever could. This is how you remove fear, not by waiting, not by hoping, not by hiding, but by deciding and by walking with fire into the man you've already declared yourself to be now. As we move closer and closer to the end of this speech, fear is no longer welcome in your house. It has robbed you long enough. It has whispered hesitation into your dreams, planted doubt in your convictions, and delayed the man you were born to become. But today it ends. You do not belong to fear. You are not its puppet. You are not average. You are not ordinary. You are not another man drifting through life hoping things improve. You are the builder of thought, the commander of action, the master of decision. And from this day forward, you will not act as if you will act, because it already is. You are not waiting for strength. You are installing it daily, hourly, with every word, every repetition, every quiet declaration you speak. When the world isn't watching, let the old voice die. The voice that questioned, the voice that hesitated, the voice that waited for perfect timing. It is no longer yours. Your new voice has no room for fear. It walks with calm, it speaks with clarity, and it moves with conviction. And when resistance rises, as it will, you will not fold. You will repeat, because repetition is how men become forged in fire. Because repetition is the builder of identity. And this speech, what you have just absorbed, is not entertainment. It is your blueprint. It is your architecture of belief. It is the structure you return to daily until your subconscious mind knows no other rhythm than certainty. You must return to this message again and again and again. Not once, not when you feel weak, not when it's convenient, but every morning, every time the world feels heavy, every time the old self tries to claw its way back. And you play this speech aloud, you speak its lines, you walk its energy until fear is not just silenced, but forgotten, until the man you've been pretending to be dies quietly in the night. And the man who speaks with faith rises. Say it now. Fear no longer lives here. I do not ask for permission. I move with power. I do not repeat fear. I repeat strength until it becomes my nature. This is the final word, not because the work is over, but because yours is just beginning. Now go walk with fire, move with discipline, live like the man who fear cannot touch, because that man is already. You let them wonder what changed. Let them feel your silence before you speak. Let them witness what belief, forged in repetition, becomes. You are no longer a man at the mercy of fear. You are the architect. You are the fire. You are the command. And now you walk like it's done.